Welcome to you all. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I know the audience is gathering, so I'm going to speak to you as the group is gathering. I'm Hazel Sive, Dean of the College of Science at Northeastern, and I'm enormously proud to welcome you today. I am enormously grateful and honored to our panel of distinguished members of the biotechnology community, and I'm going to have proper introductions for them done in a moment by Professor Jared Auclair, our Associate Dean for Professional Programs and Graduate Affairs, but also who has been so deeply involved in setting up our world-class biotechnology master's program here at Northeastern. You know, the time of COVID has more than ever cemented the fact that science is crucial. There is no other way to put it, even for people who really know nothing about science. It is clear that without science, we would not know what a virus was, let alone what a coronavirus was. We would have no idea how to find one. We would have no idea how to develop vaccines and other treatments to address coronavirus. But in fact, we do, because of science training, because of science research, millions and millions of hours of science research over many, many decades, because of the wonderful people who are putting their lives towards the betterment of society, the health of humankind through their science commitment, and above all, through the power of biotechnology. It is fantastic to see the power of science research being moved into companies, into biotech companies, where fundamental discoveries are sometimes uncovered, but absolutely acted upon to develop new therapeutics and address the challenges of human health. Truly, it is for me extraordinary. I've been involved in biotech companies myself, and watching the biotech industry develop and being part from Northeastern of the training of top graduates who enter the industry. It is a power of science that cannot be overstated. Our panel today is made of three really distinguished investigators. I'm going to, as I said, pass the introductions on in a moment. We have asked them to talk in a broad sense about biotechnology and their experiences through this. We invite you to ask questions. Please put them in the chat. We won't be having live questions, but if you put them in the chat, I will promise to be your MC and try to bundle things so that we can get you some answers. We, again, welcome you enormously. We welcome Celine, Palani, and Kapil to be with us today. We welcome all of you here, and we are here to herald, to celebrate the power of science and the power of biotechnology. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jared Auclair.
Thank you, Hazel, and welcome everyone. Just to reiterate and expand on Hazel's comments briefly, because nobody's here to listen to me, but for the panelists, I'm super proud of the biotech program at Northeastern. It is a world leader in biotechnology, and over the next several years and decades, will become so even more. And I look forward to engaging all of you in that process as time goes on. I'm going to introduce the speakers or the panelists to you all now. I am going to give I'm not going to give your technical backgrounds. I'd like you to do that, but instead, you know, my preference on these sorts of interactions is that we keep them meaningful, but also casual. So I will give an introduction with a little bit of something I know about each of you beyond your technical expertise or how you might evolve with the biotech program in general. So first, and of course, I'm going to apologize for mispronouncing every name, because that's like my standard operating model is to mispronounce names. So first, we're going to introduce Celine Karaca-Griffn, who's an alumni of the MS in Biotech program and a member of our Industrial Advisory Board. Our program is governed by an Industrial Advisory Board so that we perform the trainings that are needed in industry. Then we have Palaniappan from also the Industrial Advisory Board, and I've known Palani since the first days that I came on board at Northeastern to lead the biotech program. He's been instrumental in guiding us through that path, especially as we look at novel technologies and cell and gene therapy. And last but not least, Kapil Bahl, who I've known for half my life. We went to grad school together at UMass Medical School. So excited to have the three of you here with us today to share your insights. I'm going to ask you to do each your own quick introduction, and then I'll pass back to Hazel to moderate the discussion. So Celine, if you wanted to kick us off, that'd be great if you could keep your comments to just a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. Very happy to be here. Thank you for having us here. This is Selen. As you said, I'm an alumni of Northeastern University. I did my master's in biotechnology and graduated back in 2011. So currently, I'm a senior principal at Accenture. It's a global consulting firm. And I'm in life sciences practice. So we do serve our clients who are either biotechnology companies or larger biopharma. My current role is I'm offering development lead for our life sciences practice. So what that means is I work with our life sciences lead to identify areas that are the biggest needs for our clients. The emerging areas in biotechnology and in biopharma. And I develop either point of views or assets or services to help them with their needs and for them to create value for the patients.
Great, thanks. Palani.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Great to be here. Wonderful to be here as a part of this panel. Palaniappan. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Aruvant. Aruvant is one of the Vant family of companies within Aruvant family of companies. We focus on gene and cell therapy to treat blood-based disorders, things like sickle cell disease, beta thalassemia, et cetera, et cetera. We also focus on metabolic disorders. And I've been in this role about a year. And before this, I was with Sarepta Therapeutics. And prior to that, with Takeda and Millennium. And I've been, as Jared noted, I've been involved with the Industrial Advisory Board from my Takeda days a number of years ago. So it's great to be part of that team as well. And again, my interest stems in a number of different areas: bioprocess, analytical chemistry, formulation, gene therapy, cell therapy, et cetera, et cetera. So it's great to be here. With that, pass it on back to Jared.
Thanks, Palani. Kapil.
Thanks, Jared. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. I'm an associate scientific director at Moderna. I've been there for 6 years. It's my only biotech experience that I've had since leaving my postdoc at Yale. So Moderna, just a quick overview, uses modified mRNA technology, and I work within infectious disease within the vaccine group, particularly in T-cell workflows. So just a quick overview: B cells secrete antibody which can neutralize viruses. T cells are kind of like the helper arm and the effector arm to directly kill virus-infected targets. So I oversee our efforts on both the preclinical and clinical level. So preclinical is designing models to particularly address T-cell responses for particular disease areas. And for the clinical side of things, mostly making sure we have the right assays in place to make sure we get a good assessment of those responses. In addition, I work closely with academic and contract research organizations on both preclinical and clinical side of things. So the preclinical is mostly if we don't have models in-house, to find models that other people might have that would be best to explore what we need to explore. And the clinical side is also to build upon our capabilities of standard kind of assays that people use and see if there's something novel that we can get more information with outside. And that's both with academic and contract research organizations. So that's kind of an overview of my role.
Thanks, Kapil. And before I pass it back to Hazel to moderate, and before I forget, I want to thank Kevin Thompson and his team. And prior to Kevin joining the College of Science, James Boulos, and Diana for helping us facilitate and organize this panel discussion. Hazel.
Thank you so much, Jared. It's very inspiring to hear your initial trajectories and how you are working in biotech now. Please, everyone, now we are open for a discussion. Please add your questions to the chat. I'd like to talk to you. I'd like you to ask, whichever of you would like to, the question of how we can best interface the training we do in universities with the directions that biotech is going in. And from your own personal experiences, what you would like to, what you might want to share about what was really useful to you in your training that prepared you to go into biotech, and what thoughts you have about what would have been more useful to you to position yourselves as future leaders in the biotech industry. Whomever or each of you, if you would like to pick this up.
I'll go first. Yeah, thank you, Dean C. This is a great question. Yeah, in fact, my entry into biotech was very accidental. I wanted to be a professor in a university, early on, but I couldn't get there. So accidentally, I got into a job in upstate New York doing analytical chemistry, and that's where I started. To answer your question about what sort of skill sets and things like that, especially young people listening here, my advice is get into the area you like, build your skill sets, broaden your skill sets, as many skill sets as you can get, and that's exactly what I did. Got into analytical chemistry, but kept expanding my horizon. Bioprocess, formulation chemistry, quality, regulatory, non-clinical, et cetera, et cetera. So that sort of gave me a nice trajectory throughout my career. First at Gilead Sciences, Biogen IDEC, Millennium, Takeda, Sarepta, and currently at Aruvant. So that's one way to get to the point where you want to get to. Particularly when I think about a drug, I don't think about whether it's a biologics or small molecule or gene therapy, but the broader question is, can you, make an effect pharmacologically, as Kapil was describing about T cells? Can you impact in some way in a pharmacological sense? And broader set of skills that help you to answer that question is the way to do this.
That is fascinating, Palani. I think your landscape of chemistry to biotech is so interesting. I would love to just follow up, but I want to hear from the others in terms of, what kinds of training is best? Is it biology? Is it chemistry? Is it some biological chemistry? So just throw that out there. But in terms of, what was helpful to you, let me keep this going with Selen and Kapil and see if you have any thoughts you'd like to share about what has been most useful to you in your trajectory to biotech. And then maybe we can come back to this question of exactly what training, Palani, later. So Selen, did you have would you like to add something?
So my journey has been, a bit different. So I can offer, my experience. So as I mentioned, I did my bachelor's degree is in molecular biology and genetics and chemistry, and I did my master's in biotechnology at Northeastern. And after that, I joined Novartis as a biochemical engineer. So for a number of years, I worked there as a biochemical engineer, but also as a research scientist as well. Then in my view, so now being in consulting, I'm doing more of the business strategy for life sciences companies. And in my view, it was very important having the scientific background and understanding and to be able to speak with, scientists, but also the business education as well, to be able to see also a bit more at a high level what really matters, what is the value chain of biotech and pharma, how do we, set strategies for biotech companies, and also answering the business questions and issues, right? So for me, that business education knowledge, but also that in combination with scientific background was really important to get to where I am today.
Very, very interesting and important. Let's bear these threads in mind. I think the business science juxtaposition is something I know that Jared has been focusing on for our biotech master's programs. And I think, this is a really important thread. Kapil, what would you like to add? Would you like to add something on this question of what was really important for you?
Yeah, since one of the things that I'm kind of getting into that's really helpful for me. So for example, I mentioned T-cell responses, and monitoring T-cell responses is actually very difficult. And one of the things that helps out a lot is bioinformatics. So that component has been very, very helpful in terms of helping predict some T-cell epitopes and kind of confirming that biologically. So that aspect has been kind of really important for us. But one general thing that I'll just say overall, one of the things that I think was lacking for me in grad school is, you kind of stay in your little cocoon and only collaborate with people that are in the similar areas as you. And what's been nice that has happened at Moderna is that there are all these people bringing different kind of ideas, such as, chemistry and bioinformatics that I mentioned, that you can really drive projects. And actually you can only drive projects forward with having all those different pieces into place. And you just can't all come from one area. So that's been the important thing for me.
Thank you so much, Kapil. These are fascinating questions, and there's a number that are coming up that are extensions of this. Our group is very curious to know about your own trajectories and about the training of people on the road to contributing to biotech. But let me turn to a slightly different question at this time, which is, at this time, we are so struggling to keep the research effort going in the presence of COVID restrictions. We're struggling with that at Northeastern. How do we keep the research effort going? How do we keep collaborations expanding? How do we actually keep the whole enterprise going with all of the COVID restrictions? And, do you have some anything you'd like to share about how you have, personally managed, or your company has personally managed to keep all the research going? Obviously it has been, and production has been going. How have things been in terms of biotech and COVID that you would like to share with us, that perhaps have some lessons for us also as we bring our research up to speed in universities? Looking around, Selen, Kapil, Palani, any of you want to?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So I'm just going to try to answer that in a way that that makes sense. So early on, if you think about 2020 March or February, we were getting into this global pandemic, and the way we were thinking about what we were going to do and how we were going to live our life was completely different compared to what we are today, right? We have about 5 different vaccines out there, and there's different types of drugs that we can access. So our view on how this is all going to look has become different. Early on, we limited the number of people. We wanted people to be wearing masks, and we wanted to be socially distanced. And we said, not everybody is coming to office, but still keep things going, right? We didn't want to drop that. And I'm mentioning that simply because if we take the approach that we stop work, that's not going to be productive for anybody. As you saw, this idea of science playing into solving this problem is tremendous for all of us. If we didn't take that approach, I don't think we will be here with 5 different vaccines from different companies, messenger RNA, adenovirus, and so on and so forth. I think science should drive everything we do. Data should drive. And the one way to do that is however you feel appropriate for the times that you are in should drive the decision that you're making to keep people safe and keep moving forward.
Thank you, Palani. That's such an interesting question. I just keep thinking it is so extraordinary that the major vaccines are this crazy technology of messenger RNA encased in fat. It is extraordinary to see the power of RNA and liposomes coming together in this way that's actually clinically useful, that's saving the world. I think really when I think back on the whole liposome technology and how I personally have tried to use liposomes to get genes into embryos, which I study in my own research, and that whole technology, which is a little iffy, but how it has worked from biotech to kind of save the world for at least, 2 of the major vaccines, I think it is quite extraordinary and inspirational to address the power of collaboration as you've talked about, and the power of biotech there. So thank you for sharing those thoughts about collaboration and ongoing research in this difficult time. We can certainly keep going through the panel on this topic if anyone would like to answer these questions, but there are a whole bunch of other questions here. So perhaps let me, I'm so fascinated listening to you. Let me just see what is there that we can perhaps bundle together. And then I'm going to invite the panelists in a way to talk about anything you want. When I throw out a question, you can answer it, but if you want to answer it a bit obliquely, our audience would be very happy to hear from you. A couple of questions are about the future of biotechnology. What are the challenges that you see coming up that the biotech industry is really thinking about addressing? Clearly, coronavirus is one of them, and it's not going away. We'll need new and ongoing and modified vaccines. But what else is there that's kind of, you think, not specifically in a confidential way in the mind of your company, but just the large things in biotech that you might want to share with the audience that seem to be the big general challenges that we have to address going forward?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So also connecting it to COVID, right? COVID-19. So I think when I think of 2020, I think it took us beyond our tested limits, right? COVID-19 killed millions around the world, sent many parts of the world into an economic downturn. And we also saw like massive racial tension and political upheaval, particularly in the US. So despite all of this, the bright spot was that we've seen multiple COVID-19 vaccines that were developed in record time. And even as the economy experienced a global shift towards remote working. So when I think about it, like what we have seen in terms of disruptions, we've seen disruptions in clinical trials. They either slowed or stopped due to the pandemic. With that, we also saw the greater adoption of, like, for example, virtual trial approaches that reduced on-site visits. And what Palani was, also referring to, we've also seen increased willingness of also governments, regulatory bodies to share knowledge. So there's a lot of also, information sharing between journals, universities, private labs for coronavirus related information. So I think for me, for future, so what's the critical question is really on like, how do we continue translating the innovation with this urgency of this moment, right, into the actions for the future, for the industry, for the long term. So I think it's very early to answer it, but I'm excited to see how the industry will build on this like goodwill for the long term. I think there's a lot of innovation that can be translated for the future that we have done in the past year or so.
That's very interesting, Celine. So to the collaboration that has been so essential for us to actually combat this extraordinary challenge to the whole of humanity, and possibly the paradigm shift that has come with this in terms of collaborations where there are individual companies can actually succeed and flourish, but in the landscape also of information type sharing. And that seems to be a kind of a win-win strategy going forward. Thank you so much. Do either of the others, Kapil, would you like to address this sort of large question, or Palani, these large questions that might be going forward?
Collaboration is definitely key. I mean, if you think back to January of 2020, that's when a lab in China released the sequence. Without that sequence, there'd be no vaccines. Mm-hmm. So the collaboration was really, really important. And we continued. I know at Moderna, we would have calls at all times of the day, just discussion with scientists across the different country. And, it wasn't political. People just wanted to share the science knowledge regardless of where they were, which was great. And, what was kind of ironic immediately before what happened with COVID is I was at a conference and people, the main thing was, how do we prepare for virus X? And that's like one of the biggest challenges. How do we make sure we have all the infrastructure in place for that challenge? Do we have the right assays? Is there some workflow we can have to respond quickly? And I think, COVID has tested us, and I think we responded pretty well. But I do think, we lost a lot of people, and things probably have the lessons to be learned. But I do think that there are things that we have to keep investigating to see how to get the infrastructure, the assays in place to deal with these things very rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really striking to see how many parties have to come together. We saw in the beginning, different approaches, right? We started thinking about plasma-derived products to treat COVID-19. We started thinking about antibodies. And then we started saying, different types of vaccines. There's adenovirus-associated vaccines. There's messenger RNA vaccine. All of that came to fruition in some ways. And it's not just us, right? It's not just in the US, it's worldwide. If you look at worldwide, there's probably 20 or so vaccines out there, and there are a number of different vaccines in clinical trials. So if you think about how many parties have to come together, from discovery to sequencing to analytics to distribution to vaccination, it's amazing how we got all of this done in a span of a year, pretty much. And so what is telling for me in this experience is, especially for the young people I see in this group, is to be really appreciative of the fact that if you put your mind to it, you can get it done. You just have to come together to be able to collaborate, to be able to be in the right place, and so you got to be able to get it done. And it's not going to be one time. It's not going to be just COVID response. This kind of spirit will continue through other development in biotech, and I'm very hopeful for the future of biotech and science to be able to drive out human diseases from this planet.
Thank you so much, both of you. Completely. I think it is. I don't think. Not this audience. I think this audience, is well enmeshed in understanding and appreciating the power of biotech in addressing the pandemic. But this is not something that is yet appreciated across the world. People are lining up and, doing their best to get vaccinated, and yet not understanding how extraordinary it is that they can be, that the science was there, that the mechanism was there, that some crazy ideas were tested and have come to fruition, that there are all these different strategies that were thought about and tried and put in place, that vaccines going out there, are pure enough, are human grade enough that they can be injected into people. These are not sort of random scientific experiments. This is a production. This is a very high grade production based on really some kind of crazy fundamental aspects of scientific research that the biotech industry has been able to bring together with the input of, the whole science enterprise. So completely, I think that this is an extraordinary cause for celebration and respect of the biotech industry. And it's an interesting question for me, how to actually communicate how extraordinary this whole enterprise has been. And to encourage people who are very frightened of getting vaccinated that the benefits really far outweigh the risks involved there. So let's just go back to some of these more questions that are coming in. There are a number of questions about key skills that students need to enter the biotech industry. And this is something I think is very interesting because it seems that there are different times during the training career when it is more possible to enter the biotech industry as a member, and times where it is less possible. And so I think there's a couple of questions here for you to pick up as you prefer. What kinds of key skills does someone need in order to have to enter biotech? And at what point in the career do you think it is most useful to become part of the biotech industry and to enter a company as an employee?
Okay, maybe I can start. So in terms of skills, I think I'll talk about two. One is very general. I think curiosity is the most important that I've seen. I think by far in my, in my experience. Biotechnology or life sciences, the innovation is really fast. And today, if I've told you one subject area, probably in 2-3 months, there would be a new one. So curiosity, understanding the pace of biotech and continuously reading and learning is, I think, the most important skill. But beyond that, right, maybe when we think about scientific knowledge or even like subject matter knowledge, beyond all of that, I also see one trend, which is having a strong also technology IQ. We refer to that as TQ at Accenture. What I mean by that is this. So as you all know, technology has been a lifeline during global pandemic, and it's been increasingly important for biotech and pharma companies as well. As an example, like biotech companies are increasingly using artificial intelligence, machine learning for drug discovery, identifying new targets, or optimizing compound selection to progress through pipeline, or even using digital technologies to virtualize trials. So increasing that, technology IQ, I think is going to be really important looking towards the future. We see this across the board, and we see a lot of also increasing membership even at biotech and pharma boards, people with tech-focused backgrounds and people that understand technology better as well. So I think that's definitely a trend that I see that's not like perhaps that come to mind first. That's being a bit overlooked when we think about skills that are important for biotechnology today.
Thank you, Celine. That's very wise advice and thoughts there. Would either of our other distinguished panelists like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I personally, I would like to see young people to have that balcony view. What do I mean by balcony view? When you study, you get to specialize in a particular area, maybe an analytical chemistry area or formulation area. But see beyond that, if you go up, stand up in a balcony, you can see what is down there in a fuller picture. So if you're able to expand your view into other areas and have the people skill to be able to talk about it, to collaborate with your neighbor who is doing maybe another area of research or something, that to me is highly valuable. in addition to the TQ that Selen talked about, having that people skill, having that ability to collaborate across areas will bring a lot more value to what your own area of research might be. So I tell people that focus on those type of skill sets.
Yeah,
Thank you, Palani. Kapil, did you want to add to those?
Yeah, I could just add a
wise
couple things.
words?
And actually, looking at some of these questions, I think maybe some of this might overlap. One thing I will say that what's really great way to break into biotech is, I know at Moderna and other companies, we have co-op programs for students to get into and get a sense about, what biotech's like. You get a sense of the pace, because, one thing I will say, I did a grad school and I did a postdoc, but when I first entered biotech, it was kind of almost felt like thrown off the deep end. I don't think I completely understood the pace. I don't appreciated that. You kind of put on a 5-year grant and can study things slowly and stuff in academia. So it's a little bit faster pace. And I wish I knew that going into there. And I know there's still some people that can't always adjust. So if you have an opportunity to kind of experience that as during college or some other time, that'd be the time to do it. And, even for people that are in graduate school, a lot of companies do postdocs too, where it's really good to get that experience. And really, when we look for those people that have experience, we tend to prefer those people just for the respect that they understand the pace and could adapt a little bit more quickly. So that's the only thing I have kind of to add to that.
Yeah, Kapil, I can add there as well. So, being an alum also from the program, I did my co-op after the master's degree, and that got me my first job through connections, right? So I think it's very important, one, to do the co-op, to do the internship, do a great job while doing that, but also be proactive during that time as much as you can, network and put your name out there and let people to get to know you. I think that's really important to get you into your first job and make those connections.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I just noticed a question here, which talks about, what did we learn from this experience that, for future pandemics or things like that. I think that's a wonderful question, because if we didn't learn anything from this experience, we all have failed very badly in what we do, right? I think, this idea that, you can react as the pandemic hits you, you can react and come up with the vaccines, come up with the drugs, is not going to work for us anymore. I think as the biotechnology industry, as an academic industry, we got to be ready for what might be out there, prospective approaches in discovery, prospective approaches in looking at how we deliver drugs. Going back to Dean Sive's commentary about liposomes, I remember I worked on liposome about 20 years ago when John Bahl at Caltech said you can use liposomes to deliver drugs. No one believed that at the time, but here we are. It's a savior of the day today. So you got to be prospective in your thinking. So I think that's the lesson we can all take from this experience, that in a year we can come back to beat this pandemic with multiple different interventions in plasma-derived products, antibody cocktails, multiple vaccines using multiple modalities by multiple different companies. That learning has to tell us there is a prospective approach to everything we do here. And that's the learning I think we can take from this.
So can I ask a question?
Go.
So that's super interesting to me, listening to the three of you talk about this. The one thing that Hazel mentioned is how science sort of came to the rescue right here. I mean, I think that's absolutely right. The one thing that's also a sort of an underlying story that nobody that I know of is focused on is, frankly, how quickly the industry and businesses turned on a dime, adapted, and started to switch research initiatives, switch manufacturing initiatives, and really addressing the problem from more of a business perspective. just curious in your roles, if you felt any of that or how that sort of played out for your individual clients or companies in terms of, I mean, it's one of the most impressive things for me, right? Is, one day we your companies are studying X, the next day you switch to study COVID, and then, 3 months later you're in production for a vaccine at global scale.
I think there's a great example Northeastern did as well. One of the things when I was looking for a college for my daughter, who shout out to Meg Palaniappan, who's listening in as well, is, what's the university doing for the students who are coming into the university during the pandemic time? And I learned quite a bit about the testing program that you guys put together. And I told my daughter right then, this is probably the place for you. You'll be safe in an environment where, we talk about drugs, we talk about vaccines, but we don't talk enough about testing. I thought that was a wonderful way to get, everybody in the campus, on site, to be able to be tested on a frequent basis and be ready with the rest of the way in that. So that's a great thought, but you can't just ignore just the industry doing something. I think everybody did their part, and particularly I thought Northeastern did a great job of that testing program rollout for campus-wide for everyone who wanted that test.
Palani, thank you for saying that. I am so proud to be part of Northeastern. I think Northeastern has done its testing, and I'm looking right at Jared because he is entirely responsible for setting up our best in the world testing program. It is an extraordinarily effective test, and Northeastern has put a huge amount of money into keeping its students safe. And I would say it has so been worth every penny. We're still struggling to come out of it because the cost is enormous, but the benefit is enormous as well. And our students have been safe. And I think there are a lot of lessons there, and you raise a very interesting point that, human health is not about sitting waiting to receive a vaccine. It's about being a partner in promoting your own health, and the testing, but the responsibility of the Northeastern students in masking up and distancing and really being responsible citizens and members of the community has been so instrumental in keeping the campus safe. It is just a paradigm that, we are rightly very proud of. And thank you for mentioning it to us, because certainly Jared has received a lot of kudos about this. And I think it raises a very interesting question as to the partnership between, human health care and the actual human beings who are receiving the health care.
Yeah, absolutely. As a parent of a freshman, Northeastern freshman, this was a game changer for me. Yeah,
absolutely. And completely. And I think we did so much better than almost any other university due to very thoughtful, scientific considerations of this. So I'm so glad that you are personally pleased about this for your own family.
So thank you, Jared, for leading that. Absolutely. I've read about quite a bit about what you have done there. So
thank you.
Wonderful. There are a number of, so many questions here that are fascinating. Let me go to one that is an unusual question. It asks about the time of life, the age, your seniority, and when you can get involved in cutting edge types of approaches, including biotech. The need for skilled investigators, the need for people in all spheres to promote the power of science, to carry it out, to do various aspects that augment or contribute to biotech and to the dissemination of science knowledge, I think is very strong. And there's a question here about, given that many senior citizens possess great experience and skills, what role do you think senior citizens can play in advancing the science or even joining a biotech company in some role? It's a great, unusual question.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think usually you talk about people joining biotech, you talk about young people doing it, and this is a little bit different in that tone that, experienced people. I think there's a lot for anyone to play in biotech as long as you have the background to be able to impact in a particular area. The age or seniority or anything like that should not stop you from contributing to it, right? That's the right answer to this. But there's also a practical answer to it that this is a two-way street. The company who needs the help and the person who wants to give the help should be able to have the two-way street and two-way conversation about what makes this click. And that comes from connections, and that comes from universities like Northeastern having that conversation with the companies to be able to bring people in to various roles. And it's not a quick answer, but I think starting a conversation in that direction should be able to help.
I'm looking at our other two panelists to see if they want to add anything, but I'm thinking here, it's a very interesting question because it perhaps gets to a fundamental aspect of the connection between biotech, science, and the citizen. The biotech industry is there as an industry. It's got to be economically viable. It's also doing something really useful. Universities are there for the same reason, really, to discover and then to innovate. And the closer we can do it with biotech for the right research, the better, in my opinion. But there is also a very strong community connection between universities and the community, and it's a connection I'm very interested in growing even deeper. And I'm sort of looking at you and thinking, how does biotech fit into connections with the community? That not only are you doing important, extraordinary work to promote biotechnology products and directions, and you're doing this in an economically sound way, but there are people who would be very interested in connecting with you. And I'm just sort of throwing out there this thought of, what do we do about that? How could we actually get citizens more familiar with biotech, more connected in ways that would be useful to biotech, but also would give perhaps a different cachet to the larger population in terms of what the biotech industry actually is all about?
I can mention one thing that's kind of been going on, especially in the context of COVID, is that we actually have this consortium called Mass CPR, which is really COVID focused, and it's a lot of both biotech and academic partners getting together and talking about science, sharing hot data and stuff. And actually, what has happened is every month or so, there's actually a public forum where they present data to the public, and I believe they're allowed to ask questions. So there is some of that going on now, but yeah, I agree that it could be expanded.
Thank you, Kapil. Very, very interesting.
Additional to that, I'm also thinking from the consumer point of view, right? So the patients are at the end of the day, are the receiver end of all the therapies that either biotech or biopharma is discovering, developing, and commercializing. But one theme that I find getting very important is the experience part. So the experience that is delivered, it's not just the medicine, but patient experience is becoming increasingly important because that drives the outcomes from the patient. And that's ultimately the goal, right? For any biotech or pharma company is to create value for patients. So in that sense, involving communities to understand that experience, but also in general, everything that surrounds that patient and how that shapes their experience, and understanding that is, I think, one of the ways to bring them in as well. Not just senior citizens, but I think any patient at any age.
Those are really terrific answers. And I think, sort of embrace the partnership between biotech and biopharma and the patients, and, how how it's working for people, which clearly must be important to inform the next generation of, products that come out of the companies and so on. So very, very interesting. There's a question here that I want to give a great encouragement to the person who asked it, Drishti. Due to COVID and the limited in-person learning, do you think education opportunities like a PhD are limited? And, how would this impact going into biotech? I want to assure you that PhD opportunities are not limited in any way. And, Professor Auclair can talk about this more extensively. We are going right ahead here at Northeastern with our PhD training. In fact, we have a brand new program that gives our PhD students work experience, including in some of these outstanding companies that are represented here today. And this is to make sure that there are the expert trainees that are ready to enter biotech and to carry forward the important work that's being done there. So I do not believe that there has been any impact on PhD training, at least in this next round of, of training and of the year going ahead. We've continued our PhD training throughout the pandemic, sometimes a little remotely, but I would say always productively. So if you're interested in a PhD, Drishti, you go right ahead and apply to us, and we would love to see your application. Good. So, we're getting to the top of the hour, and we could take questions forever, but I wonder if we could ask each of you to give a small wrap-up thought about, your perspective on where you are now. How encouraged are you feeling? What are you thinking about just the next bit of time for biotech and or whatever else you would like to say to the aspiring students who are in the group? Any kind of wrap-up thought you like. Let's keep it very, very open indeed. Kapil, would you like to start with this one?
Sure. I mean, just kind of reiterate, bringing it back around that, as biotechnology grows, you're just going to need to have skill sets that we don't even know it probably exist yet in the future. And perfect example, I just thought about this. They were saying for the J&J trial, they used AI to predict where they should run the trials. So those kind of things you couldn't even think about doing, 5-10 years ago. So I think there are a lot of skill sets that we can be creative about what we bring into biotechnology. So I think things are going to really change quite a bit and bring unique skill sets that we don't even know now. And then hopefully Jared's working on the PhD program for that.
Thank you very much. That's a very important thought, and in a way for us to work with you to think through with you how we're training our PhDs. Jared, did you want to say?
He indeed is working on that, or I am indeed working on that.
We so value our connections with you beyond this panel. I can't even emphasize how much. Selen, do you have some things that you would like to share?
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, I think the future is here. Like, we've seen a lot of innovation in the past year or so, and I think there is a lot more that's coming. I'm thinking, for future, I think that there are new modalities such as like cell and gene therapy. Apart from that, the industry is looking into, let's say, the patient experience. It's becoming more important to understand the outcomes. And then there's a technology convergence as we talk about that, right? There's an increasing opportunity of assets that rely on either technology, either to be discovered, developed, or delivered to the patient. So there is a lot of innovation coming. So I'm very hopeful, and there are many areas that can be studied and focused on. So I'm excited to see how the industry will innovate going forward as well.
Absolutely brilliant. I think, the excitement around biotech and where you all are taking it and where universities can contribute to training, I think it's an extraordinary moment in the landscape. Palani.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of my colleagues there in their comments. I think areas that we need to focus on are forward-looking areas. This goes back to the comment about being prospective in our approach. So, Celine mentioned cell and gene therapy. That's what actually we are focused on in Aruvant. How to exploit cell and gene therapy to treat conditions like sickle cell. This was a much ignored condition for a long periods of time, but now you can see about 10 different companies working in that space. Let me also talk about, for a minute, another area of interest, my personal interest, microbiomes. So this is an area that's up and coming, really on fire in the Boston area. Number of different companies thinking about starting with C. difficile to treat that condition, but expanding into other areas, autoimmune conditions, autism, and things of that nature. I think there's a lot of potential between cell and gene therapy and microbiomes to really fundamentally impact human life and human diseases. I think students in Northeastern should think about those areas and try to associate themselves and connect in industry people who are doing these types of works and explore opportunities in those spaces.
Thank you, Palani. That's very, very interesting. Well, folks, this is fascinating, and I would be happy to sit here with you for a lot longer and get your wisdom, but we are at the top of the hour, and I want to thank you just enormously for the time that you have given us today, Dr. Palaniappan, and I apologize if I slaughtered your name there, from Aruvant. We so appreciate you being here. Dr. Selen Karaca-Griffn from Accenture and Dr. Kapil Bahl from Moderna. We are so grateful for your partnership, for your collegiality. We look forward to working with you in years to come, in days to come, as well as years to come. This is of the moment. Biotech is of the moment, and we enormously appreciate the insights and thoughts that you've shared with our audience today that have given them both inspiration and ideas for their future and for the context of biotech in the time of COVID. Thank you so very much for joining us. And I wish everyone in the audience a very pleasant day. Thank you again for all of you for being here. And one last time to our panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.